In this video, I want to explain you how I created every single one of my projects, the system that I use to create a minimum viable product. When I want to create an app and I have an idea and I want to create an application for myself, or a client comes and asks me to build an app, this is the system that I use. Maybe it's not the perfect one, maybe it's not the best one that you will see on your entire life, but this is probably the simplest one. But first of all, you need to understand what is a minimum viable product, because otherwise, whatever I say is irrelevant. So an MVP is the most basic version of your product, okay, to check if it's feasible to carry out your idea. Basically, you have an idea, you have a problem that you want to solve, and the minimum viable product lets you say, okay, this is something that I want to develop. This is something that is bringing me money, or this is something that I want to stop doing. I want to put it off because it's a complete waste of time. I believe a minimum viable product is composed mainly by these three different parts, okay? Design, marketing, and programming. But none of these things work by itself. All these things work together. And one of the most important things that you need to understand if you want to design a minimum viable product is that the minimum viable product is not the end design. It's not the end product at all, okay? It just lets you check if your idea is something worth building. No more than that. You don't need to overcomplicate the first version of your product. And here we are very used to hear that a minimum viable product is something from a tech company, okay? Because 98% of the time we see a tech company developing an MVP. So an MVP is not necessarily like a technical product, okay? And the reason I'm telling you this is because at first, when I didn't know anything about creating an MVP, I used to think that it needed to be an app. In this case, in this channel, we talk about programming, but it can be anything that lets you test your assumptions. But coming back to where we were, the most important thing, before doing anything, is gather all the necessary information, okay? And this is basically your value proposition, okay? Your hypothesis, the defined problem, and the defined audience, where first of all you define the problem and you define the audience, and then you see how you could solve your problem, how you could solve the problem that you have already defined. This is your hypothesis. Then once you design that, you start with the user flows, okay? And I put here like user stories, but user story is more related to programming, not much to designing. But it's also useful to the design. For designing your app. So what is a user flow? A user flow is basically the path that the user needs to take to arrive or to get the desired results. And I will show you an example. This is an app that I've designed a couple of years ago. This is basically an e-commerce. So you start by designing or by putting here the goal, okay, of the user flow. Here the user wants to make a purchase, but is not authenticated. So first you map the steps, and then below the step you put the user action, okay, what the user needs to do to arrive at the next screen, okay? So here, for example, I put the user arrives at the specific product screens and decides to add the item to cart. The user receives a notification that the item was added to the cart, and then he clicks there, and then the user would follow the next steps. Okay, I don't want to bore you here, but it's basically what the user needs to do to arrive at the end screen, okay, which is the user is able to review any details in relation to the total price, checkout details, user payment details, and user address details. Once the user is satisfied, they can complete their purchase. So basically the user flow lets you review the details and see all the possible friction points on your product, okay, before developing anything. Then you start designing the sitemap, okay, and the sitemap is basically all the links on distribution on your app. A lot of people avoid this step and some decide to develop the sitemap. But just to show you an example of how a sitemap looks like, it's something like this, okay? Here is the design of the e-commerce. So you start, for example, let's say the home, and you map all the links, okay? Shop, feature products, contact us, blog, profile, social networks, footer, login, sign up. This is one way in which you can design the sitemap. There are 1,000 different ways, and you can take the approach that it suits you best. Okay, for example, here the product page, okay, add to cart, wish list, description, reviews, share. The sitemap is like the middle step between the flows and the wireframes, okay? It lets you define the screens that you need to develop or that you need to design. After that, you start with the wireframes, okay? Now, the most important thing here on this step is that the wireframes are not for designing a beautiful product or a beautiful screen. The wireframes are here to see the product from a user perspective, okay? That's why on the wireframes, I don't add the colors, I don't add typography, because those things distract the eye and don't let you see the user experience on that screen, which is the most important thing here. So let's say you're, I don't know, developing a social media app. You will probably start with a frame, okay? Let's say this is an iPhone, and you will start putting the elements, okay, one below the other. You will probably have a navigation menu on the bottom, then I don't know, user's profile on the top, some text here, okay? This would be completely according to your idea, according to your app. Here I use neutral palettes, and usually I use Inter. I will show you an example for you to understand. This is basically how a wireframe looks like, okay? Even though this is a Spanish design, okay, for an e-commerce here in Argentina, you see that it's very clean, okay? I don't have anything. I use a neutral color palette with no complex typography, and I don't even add the text, okay? This is very simple and straightforward. The text that you are seeing here are just to test the sizes of the screen. But the most important thing here on the wireframes is for you to see that you need to see how the user interacts with the screen, okay? And see all the possible things that could be distracting the user or that could distract the user in the future. You need to remove all those elements and only leave the specific necessary ones. After this, the prototyping comes in, okay? And this lets you see the elements interactions, okay? How the user interacts with each of the screens. And if you're using an application like Figma, you are probably already familiar with this. Now, I don't want to forget about the user story, okay? A user story is a short description of a user's need written from their point of view. And here is a practical rule, okay? Card, conversation, and confirmation. Think of the story as card, the card, short text, okay, conversation, what the team and product owner will discuss, and confirmation, the criteria that confirm it is complete. This prevents the text from being the final specification. It's something that, I mean, being 100% honest, I don't use it on every single app because it takes time, and sometimes you don't have all the time that it takes, but it's very useful, okay? It's very useful, and it lets you organize mentally. Now, once you already gathered all the necessary information and you designed the screens, and you start developing the app, okay? And when it comes to developing the app, I usually start first of all by with a minimum planning, okay? You don't need to plan everything in depth because it will probably change with the pass of the time, and you, I mean, if you're already familiar with developing minimum viable products, or you have already built been building apps, you will probably know that things change. Okay, because maybe, I don't know, a certain technology changes something, so you need to plan the minimal things. Okay, and for this I usually divide it by sprints, then projects, and then tasks. Okay, and if you go to Notion, you already have like pre-made templates for this that are very useful. Okay, I sometimes use a template like this, okay, where I can create projects. Okay, let's say, I don't know, design the app, and then I can start planning here all the tasks. Okay, all the things that I will need to do on this specific project. Something that I recommend you to do when you are developing the MVP is establishing the time that you have to develop something. If you just say, I'm gonna develop this specific thing or this specific feature, it will take you twice the time that it takes you to plan and then develop the feature. Now, once I already did like a minimum planning, I start with a basic backend outline. Okay, this helps me prevent conflicts with the database schemes. It depends on if you're choosing like SQL or non-SQL. It will change depending the technology, but it helps a lot to prevent failures. And a very useful thing that I use here is I already consider things that maybe I want to add in the future, because if you want to add something in the future and you don't have the space on the database, you don't have the schemes for that, then you have to run a script and it's a complete mess. And then I start, once I developed a basic backend which contains the schemes and the APIs, the interaction with the database, I start with the front end. And you don't need to overcomplicate these steps. Okay, you don't need to spend 1 month designing which technology you are going to use for your minimum viable product. Just stick to the one that suits you better, because the customer doesn't care about the technology. They care about solving their specific problem. And obviously, once I did that, I launched the first version of the application. And here the most important thing to understand is that this is not a process that ends. Okay, this doesn't end on the launch. It's a process where you launch, you measure, you learn, and you iterate, or you know where you need to pivot. Now, how do you take a decision if pivoting or continue with the same feature? What you need to do is go back. You need to go back to your previous assumptions or your hypothesis and see if it's being complied. See if the things that you have previously defined are working. And then, last but not least, marketing. Okay, that is, it's not a process that ends. Okay, because marketing is a consistent process. You need to do marketing when you start, and you need to do marketing while you are developing the app. Now, something that I would recommend you to do here is, I would start, if either you don't have money or you don't have a team, I would start a YouTube channel and start creating content around the topic or around the audience that you are pursuing. Okay, create helpful videos, and once in a while create videos to promote your application. And I would recommend you to start this process before programming the app, because creating an audience usually takes time, and it will probably take you like months or years. It doesn't mean that it will take you months or years to get your first customers, but creating a big audience will take you time. And the reason I'm saying this is because I have a Spanish YouTube channel with almost 2K subscribers, and I have been uploading content over the past 2 years. Now, the most important thing that you need to understand when you're developing an MVP is that it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to test your assumptions. It just needs to test your hypothesis. And if you need to pivot, it's completely okay. All the well-known companies that you see nowadays, most of them started with a product that has nothing to do, or that had nothing to do with the product that you see nowadays. And YouTube is an example of that. So I hope this video helped you. If you have any type of questions, you can leave them on the comments so I can answer them or create specific videos for that. It will help me a lot if you subscribe to the channel and you hit the like button, because in that way we can keep reaching new people. And on the next couple of days, I will be launching Kobo, an app that helps you create content that drive users to your app. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.